"Hail, Emperor! Those about to die salute you," Marcus said along with the other 6 gladiators, all standing in a line with him. The Emperor nodded, and then the crowd roared. The other gladiators eyed him up and down before taking their places in the middle of the arena, while Marcus searched the crowd quickly until he found her, his wife, Marina. Their eyes met, and she gave him a small smile and a nod. He grinned. It was the first time he had seen her since the day they had been separated. She looked tired, yes, but just as beautiful as the last day he had seen her, even more so. He would win. He had to. He put on his helmet, took up his curved sword and small shield, then went to the center of the arena as well, facing all the others. They wore a wide range of armor and weapons, from one holding a trident and a net to another with a long spear. It made little difference to Marcus. He had faced all these weapons before. The crowd grew silent as the Emperor raised his hand. Marcus clutched his sword tightly and bent his knees, ready. His 6 opponents readied themselves. Then the Emperor dropped his hand and the crowd roared once again. Marcus stayed still as all 6 gladiators charged. He hadn't expected them to move so fast. Within a moment he was surrounded, the last thing he had wanted. He had to break out. He went for the closest opponent, holding a sword and shield, and aimed his curved sword at his leg. The gladiator blocked with his shield, just like Marcus had wanted. Then he slashed diagonally upward right through the man's throat. Marcus didn't have the luxury of playing to the crowd, not in this situation. However, the crowd cheered regardless as the first blood was spilled on the sandy arena floor. The others went at him and Marcus kept moving, blocking and dodging and counter-striking when he could. To anyone watching, it would seem like Marcus was being forced back, overwhelmed by the numbers of now 5 against 1. But when Marcus's back hit the wall of the arena, he grunted in satisfaction. There was no way for him to be surrounded again. The gladiators came at him still, hard and fast, but when he stabbed his sword violently through the stomach of one, twisted, then pulled the blade out along with the poor man's insides, that's when the others hesitated for the first time. Unfortunately for them, they had no idea who they were dealing with. It wasn't long ago that Marcus had been living a simple life as a farmer with his wife Marina. They hadn't been married for long, but their love for each other felt as old as time. They had been trying for a child, and at the time Marcus had been so confident they would be having one soon. That was until the soldiers came. He had heard that a war was being fought across the valley, but he had never expected it to find his little farm. He had never been a fighter. He had always been blessed with a simple and pleasant life. That all ended the night the soldiers burst into the hut and pulled Marcus and Marina from their beds in the middle of the night. That was how it all started, everything that had led him to this point. In the arena, Marcus kept moving side to side, his back against the arena wall. His opponents were hesitant, but they were slaves just as he was. They had to fight, and he knew it. Another came, and Marcus dispatched him rather quickly. Then another, nervously holding his spear. That was a problem. The distance allowed him to strike at Marcus from outside arm's reach. As he did, the other 2 gladiators approached Marcus, one on each side. Yet there was little he could do other than block the spear point. So with his shield hand, he grabbed the shaft of the spear behind the blade and pulled. The spearman stumbled forward right onto Marcus's blade. Then Marcus turned to block an attack on one side with his shield, then from the other with his sword. He traded blows with the 2 remaining gladiators as the crowd shouted. He was breathing hard, and sweat was pouring down him as he searched for an opening. One of their blades slashed his arm and he gritted his teeth in pain but didn't let it distract him. Then he saw the opening he needed. He slashed down at one of their legs, cutting it clean off. Then when the other briefly froze in shock, Marcus took the opportunity and bashed him with his shield. The man fell backwards to the ground and Marcus was on him immediately, curved sword held to his throat. The crowd waited as Marcus looked up at the Emperor's thumb. Thumbs up meant life, thumb down meant death, but the Emperor did nothing. He dropped his hand again. Marcus frowned. What was going on? When the gate to the arena opened, Marcus soon got his answer. The crowd was absolutely elated as the big-maned lion stepped onto the sand. Marcus took a deep breath. Anyone else might be frozen with fear at the sight, but Marcus had more to fight for than just his own life. After being captured, Marcus and Marina had been taken to a slaver's market and sold off separately. That had been the last time he had been in her presence. After that, it had been months of hard training and mock combat, all to prepare him for this day, the day he had been promised. It was clear the lion had been starved in preparation for the arena. It seemed to be almost dazed at the chaos around it. The crowd, the blood, the sand. Marcus watched it carefully as the beast went to one of the corpses he had left behind and sniffed. It pawed at the corpse briefly before quickly losing interest. The gladiator who had been left alive now got to his feet. Marcus glanced at him, seeing the fear in his eyes. "Do not run," Marcus started, but before he could finish the sentence, the man bolted. It was like a switch went on in the lion's brain. It dashed after the man who was running for the nearest gate. Within seconds it was on him, launching itself into the air and bashing into him. They both fell to the ground, though the lion landed on its feet, pinning the gladiator underneath it in perfect position for it to clamp its powerful jaws down onto his throat. The man continued struggling for a few seconds, but just a few. Soon the man was no more, and the lion let go of his throat and licked his lifeless face. Then it stood upright over the body and looked straight at Marcus. A part of him had hoped it wouldn't notice him, but that was a foolish thought. He had to kill it. He had no choice but to fight. The man he had cut the leg off had bled to death now, so it was just Marcus and the lion left in the arena. Only one of them would be surviving. Marcus kept his back to the wall and started circling the arena as the lion came. It was slow at first, eyeing him and growling. The crowd went silent in anticipation, watching as the lion came closer and closer. It stopped just a few meters away. "Come on then," Marcus shouted. As if in response, the lion pounced. Marcus dodged to the side and the lion hit the wall of the arena. He stabbed down and slashed its side, blood splattering the sand. The lion launched at him with its front two paws, which Marcus managed to block with his shield, but the force knocked him to the ground. The lion was on him immediately, going for his throat, but he blocked it again with his shield, so then it went for his leg. Marcus screamed as he felt the beast's teeth puncture his thigh, but he didn't let the pain distract him. He slashed at its head again and again, cutting out its eye, then taking off its ear. The lion roared and backed away. Marcus took the opportunity to get to his feet, but then the lion came at his throat once again. He smashed his shield into its jaw, but still the force of the impact sent him to the ground. The lion snapped and clawed and roared, and Marcus slashed and kicked and smashed. They wrestled along the ground in a mix of blood and sweat and sand, until Marcus got the perfect angle and thrust his sword upwards through the lion's neck. It let out a gurgle, and then it fell on top of him, lifeless. The weight of the beast on his chest made it so he couldn't breathe, and his burning arms made it difficult for him to push it off. But as the crowd gasped in astonishment, push it off he did, and ever so slowly he came to his feet, leaving a puddle of blood on the ground. Marcus's helmet had been left dented on the ground, and blood was streaming from numerous wounds across his body. It had to be over. Had to be. He looked up at the Emperor through the one eye that wasn't swollen shut to see him holding his hand up, and then he dropped it once again. Oh no, Marcus thought as the gate to the arena opened once again, and this time out stepped the one man Marcus hadn't wanted to see. He was tall, over a head and a half taller than Marcus, and his muscles were clearly defined despite him wearing chest armor and heavy leg and arm guards that matched his helmet. On his left hand was a large tower shield, in his right was a 10-foot long spear, and at his waist was a backup short sword. Marcus knew the man by reputation only. The gladiators knew him as Ferox, but amongst the citizens he was simply known as the Unbeatable. The gladiator who had fought his way to freedom 7 times and refused each time, winner of over 100 battles, and possibly the one man that could stop Marcus getting what he wanted. He glanced over to where Marina sat, her face set in a concerned line, and he wasn't sure at this distance, but it seemed like she was crying. Then his one good eye swiveled over to where his owner sat, his face eager. Marcus remembered the conversation well, the one that had given him hope. He had been called to the Lannisters' private quarters, which had surprised him. After months of training, he had never been allowed to enter, but when the Lannister had explained the deal that had come straight from the Emperor himself, Marcus understood why. Survive the arena, the Lannister had told him, and you and your wife will get your freedom. This was it. Marcus had to win this fight. He had no choice. Ferox came towards him with a cocky gait, assured in his win already. Marcus couldn't blame him. He was sure he looked pitiful, but just like the others, Ferox had no idea what Marcus was fighting for. Every muscle in his body ached. His wounds were stinging more than he had ever felt, and blood was making the grip on his curved sword slippery, but he did not care. He was going to take the fight to Ferox. He took one last look at Marina, then with gritted teeth, Marcus charged. The crowd roared as the two warriors met, blade against blade, shield against shield. Marcus swiped and parried and slashed and blocked, pushing himself to keep up with the expert technique of Ferox's spear. With his one eye swollen shut though, he misjudged the distance, allowing Ferox to get a slash across Marcus's chest, opening up a thin gash. The crowd gasped as Marcus stumbled back, then cheered as Ferox raised his arms in celebration, like a true gladiator playing to the crowd. Marcus went at Ferox again, but the pain in his limbs caused his movement to be slow. Ferox smashed his shield into Marcus's face, making his nose crunch and his vision go blurry. Then Marcus was flung back to the sand as Ferox did a chest kick, forcing the air out of Marcus's lungs. Before Marcus could raise his sword arm, Ferox pierced it to the ground with his spear through his wrist. Marcus screamed as the spear was left standing as Ferox circled him. The gladiator made a show of pulling out his sword and lifting it up in the air as he looked at the Emperor. The Emperor held his thumb sideways. Marcus didn't bother to look. All he could focus on was Marina in the crowd. "I'm sorry," he said, as the Emperor's thumb turned down, and so did Ferox's sword.
I got something to tell you. Look, this isn't the only story I've made. If you want to see another video like this, click this video right here.